Hey, so we're going to do some programming today. I'm going to be working on a really cool project I've been working on for a while, and I will show you what that is. Okay, so I've got a lot of stuff going on right now. Today's mostly going to be organizing my this code, but I want to show you the final product. So I'm building my own web application framework, which honestly seems like a stupid idea. I told a friend about it. He said it also seems like a stupid idea. Um, and mostly the reason is because it's literally impossible to please every developer. So no matter what you release to the public, there's going to be someone who hates it, who doesn't like it, who wants this thing to be improved, that thing to be improved, and eventually your framework gets bloated. Um, Now, what I'm trying to do is just create a simple framework for me and just for me. And I honestly don't care if anyone else uses it. I just want things to be easier for me. And as I've been developing this framework, I have I've realized that I've always wanted to build a framework, and now is like the perfect time to do it. And that being said, framework I'm using pretty lightly. This is not like a full, any type of like full framework. It's more like a bunch of little widgets stitched together. And I actually like didn't plan on building the full thing to start out with, but as time has gone on, I've realized, oh, I could make this part of my application development so much simpler. Oh, I could make this part so much simpler. So I've ended up with this kind of like more full um, uh, set of widgets that kind of work together, even though I only meant to start out with like one or two. But they're actually not that complicated. So I'm going to take you through them. So the first thing I want to do is go into the directory where I am developing Artisfy, which is this really cool website where freelance illustrators can set up like a list of projects that they like to work on. So say like this illustrator specializes in portraits. They might be like, I'll give you I'll sell you a single color portrait with like, um, a simple background for $150. But I also do couples portraits. So like I'll sell you like a wedding portrait with like your dog in it and like a really cool bright background, like with like flowers and whatever you want, right? Flowers, a sun shining down on you, halos around your head, right? For like I don't know, $600 or $800. And so they could have all these different types of projects that they like to work on. Um, and so that's what I'm going to show you right now. If I can remember, I think, oh no, it's npm run dev. So one of the problems, no, I'm not going to get into that. Okay, so it's on 777. Okay. Usually when I do these screencasts, I get like so distracted by so many thoughts. Okay, so this is the main website, which is going to be released hopefully sometime in the next few months, depending on how long I spend developing this framework I'm working on. And I'll show you what it looks like if you log in as an artist. So actually, this is what it's going to look like for a client too. The idea is you have like a title to the page, your illustration services, you say, who this is by, maybe this links back to their website, and then you have like a bundle here, like I was saying, it might say like the single portrait bundle, and then like this one, this is obviously repeated here, and they would normally have different background images and different descriptions and different titles. But I'm just doing development right now, so I just want to get the single style looking right, and then I'm gonna, make it customizable. So this framework I'm building, let me just explain the background to you. So I, let me see, I'm gonna do full screen camera. Okay, so the reason I'm developing this framework is because I've tried working with React. I currently work with Vue.js at work, and they're just not enough. They end up taking a lot of time to like figure out these like edge cases. They don't give me, enough power because of that. Well, at the same time, like it's super simple to do some basic stuff, but that basic stuff wouldn't necessarily be that hard in the first place. And then to top it off, and this is really what gets me, is you end up installing Vue, and then like you need this other package to handle this edge case, and then you need this other package, and you end up piling it on until you have a megabyte of bandwidth taken up just with JavaScript, just with code, just for your front end code. And when you think about it, on our modern, internet, you're watching YouTube, YouTube takes up a megabyte, what, like every second, right? So like a megabyte shouldn't be that much, right? But the thing is, for a website like this, where I'm trying to build something that, someone can use anywhere, someone might be on the train, they might be wanting to customize their website, or there might be a client who's like looking to hire an artist. If this website has like a megabyte of content to load, it's going to be really slow, because they're on the train, they're using like their wireless, phone connection. It's going to take, 10 seconds to load a megabyte. And to me, that's unacceptable. So like, why burden yourself with all this extra stuff that comes with other frameworks? Why not just render raw HTML? Instead of having, a lot of front-end frameworks, they'll take your HTML inside of JavaScript functions, and then they'll like use the JavaScript to build the templates. But why not just render the templates on the back end so you can cache them? So so they're cached on the server, and you can just serve them instantly, right? And then just load a little flavor on top of it. So that's what this framework is about that I'm developing. It's just about adding a little bit of like extra helper methods on top of the DOM in order to make it easy to do stuff that you might commonly do and use Vue.js or use React to do. Um, and that being said, I just want to be totally upfront from the get-go. Um, Developing my own like helper methods. I want to stop calling it a framework. Developing these like set of helper methods that are all working together in concert has made me seriously question um, what I'm doing, and uh, it 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 really doesn't make sense. I'm having like so much fun building this, but it doesn't. It's like making me want to just go back to using something like Vue.js or React, or um, even like removing some of the functionality, or just like building some of the functionality like manually, because like the whole reason I'm building this set of helper libraries is so that say I'm building a new page, I have like three things that all do similar things, right? So I want to use this helper function to like do that thing for each one of those things, right? So it's going to take some work off my hands. But building this framework almost makes me think, wow, like it wasn't really that hard to do each of those pieces manually. And yeah, sure, it takes a little extra code, but like just use jQuery, dude, and like, attach the click handler to the button and like reset the DOM afterwards. Like even that might be better than using your own framework, even though, once you get to that point, it gets complicated enough. It just makes sense to go to React or to Vue.js. So I look at at building this framework as almost a way to convince myself that using and learning a framework really well is worth it. And the more I do it, the more I build this framework, the more I realize how much real actual work goes into building and maintaining those other frameworks, and that it might make sense to just bite the bullet. And it's not like they don't have solutions for all the things I was talking about, right? They have code splitting, so you only load the code you need. They have server-side rendering, so that you can like have the like time to first the the time to render the page be like as quick as possible. Um, it's just, yeah, I mean, I like kind of grew up building websites professionally, and with like jQuery and like little sprinkled in magic. So it's been hard for me to transition to something like Reactor View. So this is my attempt at like keeping things simple for me without getting into like all of the like React build process and like setting up the server side stuff, because that for me would take a few weeks, because I'm only working on Artisfy a couple days a week, and I have sales to worry about, I have marketing to worry about, I have engineering stuff to worry about. That's different than building the front end. And so setting up and building and learning how to like interact with React is just like this huge overhead that I just kind of don't want to deal with. So of course, instead of taking on that overhead, I'm taking the longer road of building my own framework. But the cool thing is, the best thing about building this framework, in my experience, has been that it's immensely enjoyable. Like, so like in using another framework, I might be like, why did they do this way? They could have done it simpler if they just did this. And now, since I'm the one building the framework, I can just do it that way that makes more sense to me. That's simpler. Okay, so let's get back to the code. Okay, so I just want to say really quick, so let's go back to this page where we have an outline of kind of everything I'm building. And it's three main components or libraries. So one is called switch, one is called IO, and one is called copy. And they're very, very simple. So all switch does is, say you are on a page and you click a button, and that button makes a little dialog box appear that asks you a question. And you click OK or you click cancel. Okay? Or let's say, a different example, right? Let's say you click on a button to upload a file, and and let's see, you upload that file, and then like a upload box appears, right? And it like shows the progress of the file upload. So like all this switch library is doing is when you click on something or when you perform an action, it's gonna open something up for you or close something for you. And it's like, it's all over a web page. You might have like a little navigation menu over here. That's going to be switch, right? It's going to open it, and then when you press the button, it's going to close it. Or if you click elsewhere, it's going to close it. You have a file uploader. You click it, it's going to open it. And I'm going to show you all of this, okay? Now, IO, this is the most recent one I've built. And this is like honestly what I'm the most proud of, because it's so fun. It's so fun. Okay, so one second. So I'm just going to warn you right off the bat. It's super hacky. And I love it because it's so hacky. But it's like, okay, so like say you're building a web application, right? And you're thinking about how the data is going to be organized, okay? So you're thinking, I've got a user and they've got a password, they've got a favorite color, they've got a username, they've got a list of bookmarks, whatever. All this data you have to keep track of in your application that you might have the user share with other people, right? Like on Twitter, like they might post a message. So the user has a group of messages and then a group of followers, and you have to show the messages to all the followers. Or like Facebook, where you might upload an album of photos, and so the user has photos, or they have albums and the albums have photos. So it's all this like data that you need to keep track of. Now, when you're first building the application, say you're building, you start off as a solo developer, and you think, I like Facebook, but it could be better. I'm gonna rebuild Facebook. Really bad, super bad idea. But what might be the first things you would think about? You'd be like, okay, well, we need a user, we need friends, we need photos, blah, 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 right? So you plan out all these data models. And honestly, by the time you get all the data models down with like, everything Facebook has, right? Events, posts, different post types, right? Because they have like the album posts, and then they have like large text posts, and they have like a multi-paragraph text post. They have all these different types of posts, and that's just like the news feed, right? And then they have comments and everything going on in there. It's a lot. It's really complicated. So once you get all of those different types of data down, you might be like, honestly, like 2 or 3 months into the project already. And all you've done is kind of spec'd out the data model. And so you haven't even gotten to like, how are people going to save these posts? What's the user interaction going to be like? That's like not even started yet. And so my idea is that, okay, what if instead of separating this all out into different data models, right? Which is, by the way, a really good idea. You definitely want different data models with like schemas that are validated, right? Like, so like if someone puts in their age, you want to make sure they put in a number instead of like dog or, whatever. So it's a really good idea to have these data models and the schemas that validate that like the data is what it should be, right? Like if you're taking like a credit card number, which is a complicated issue. You can't really do that, as a solo developer. You want to rely on a different platform. But let's say it's something as core to your business as a credit card number. You want to make sure that's actually 16 digits long, right? You want to make sure they don't just type in like, dog, 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 right? Like, because you're not going to be able to charge that credit card. So there's like some data that your business relies on that's really important. However, now hear me out. When you're first getting started and you're just building a proof of concept, right? Which is like a lot of, what a lot of developers do when they just have like these simple side projects. All they want to do is get something off the ground, right? And they don't even care. Like you don't care about your project, your social network project, your Facebook replacement. You don't care about it if in the next 2 years you can only get like 10 people to sign up, right? That's not going to be that important to you. So in my opinion, it's great to be able to build a product really quickly, and then you test it out. And if it gets traction, then spec everything out, then build the data model fully, right? Okay, so IO, this library, it's a front-end library. You attach these attributes to elements on the web page. And it's so cool because what it does is it creates the model for you, the data model for you. So say you have like a photo upload. Someone uploads a photo, you use an external service to upload it, and then you get back the URL of the photo. You put that in the DOM, right? You put that on the page, in the web page, and then you attach one of these to it. So you would say, okay, this is a photo URL, and the value you would say is inside of this div. And so then you would have this other say div, and you would say this is the person's name, and they can customize it using a widget on the page, right? Maybe one of the switch widgets, right, where you click the name, type in your new name, and then it would fill it in the page. So you have all these different pieces of information on your page. And maybe like another thing is like a post, right? So you would have a post, and you would have the text content, you would have the person who posted it, you would have maybe comments on it, whatever. You would attach all of these data-o attributes to them, and then basically what it allows you to do is call a single function on the page, and it wraps up all of the data on the page into one neat little object. Okay? Now I know if there are some experienced web developers watching this, you're probably very disappointed in me right now. However, this is not meant for like, long-term use. Okay, I just want to clarify. This is just meant like for a scrappy thing. Basically, I have 15 pages for Artisfy that I want to build out right now, real quick. And so being able to just go in there, put a bunch of data attributes on there, and ship the page, and it's like basically a working page, is very powerful for me as a solo developer. So that's basically all I want to do. So the data O attributes are the things that tell you where, what the data is, where it is, and what it looks like, okay? And the data I attributes, as you might have guessed, are the input attributes. So they're the things that take in the information. So it might be like an input box or like a set of radio buttons or choices, right? And then they're going to, and this is a cool thing, they're going to reactively take the information in the input boxes or the radio button choices and store them inside of data O attributes, okay? And then you'll be able to call that function when the user clicks save and grab it all, put it all together into this one giant object, send it off to the back end, and save it in a database. And so you don't have to worry about the schema. I mean, obviously, you can still worry about the schema. You can still validate the schema. But in the first version of the web application, all you need is some kind of permissioning on the back end where you can confirm that the user has the right to save this data, and like a single string of data, basically, right? Now, that's not how I would ideally want you to do it, but you could do it that way, right? And it'd be super fast. Okay, so right now we have these switches, which can control the visibility of things and like how things look when they're clicked on or interacted with. We have the output element attributes, which determine how the data looks on the page and can be all conglomerated into one object. And then we have the data I attributes, which are for taking in input via various elements and then outputting it to the output attributes. And then we have copy. So this one's not as interesting, but it's kind of interesting. So you would use this in concert with the switch. So say you have an inline edit interface. So you have like someone's name at the top of the page, and you want them to be able to click on that name and then have an input pop up where they can type in a new name and then click save, and then it automatically updates where, with the new name where the old name was. And so this copy, so you would use the switch in order to pop up the inline edit. However, the inline edit is going to be positioned way down on the page, right? Because if you're not using absolute positioning, it's just going to go with the natural flow of the page. So it's going to be somewhere down, or maybe it's going to be next to it, but it's not going to be right over on top of it. And so the idea behind copy is that you can copy the position and you can copy the dimensions of an element. So this, so the switch element, the one that triggered the widget, the inline edit widget to pop up, that would also have these attributes on it, the data copy position and data copy dimensions, and data copy layout is just both of these combined. So it would probably have data copy layout, and it's just going to say, okay, let's copy the position and dimensions of this element that triggered us, and so we're going to go right on top of it, and then you're going to be able to type on top, on top of that element. So let me show you how that all looks. So to show you an example of how the switch widget works, if I click on more details here, we're going to see this expand, okay? And if we click on the timeline here, we're going to see the same thing. So the timeline's going to expand. Those are both very simple examples of the switch. So you're just switching this on and off. Another example, but this is a little bit more complicated. This is using switch and the copy helper. So if you click on this, see, you get this inline edit little modal or popover, right? Right on top of this. So if you'll see, this text area is lined up right on top of this, okay? So it's getting the position of this original one and putting it right on top of it, right aligned to the left and to the top. And it's also exactly as wide as it, okay? And then here we have the timeline. So this is something that requires serious customization, right? And so I was thinking at first about having a separate page where you could customize this. But not only is that not, it doesn't provide good affordance. In my opinion, those, if it's on a separate page, it's too disconnected, right? It doesn't feel like it's as natural as customizing it right on the page. And I know that this doesn't look editable as it is. That I'm going to fix that. But for now, I'm just experimenting with the inline edit capabilities. So if I click on this capture idea, again, I get the inline edit capability, and then I get this too. So I get this little widget where I can click on the square, and I can change the color type, right? And I can change the size too. And those aren't going to save yet because the input, the data, if you'll notice here, the data attributes, I haven't implemented those yet. That's actually a new idea I only had over the last few weeks. And in fact, the data O attributes are only like a month old. So those are both new. I started out with just switch and copy, and then I was going to handle all of the input and output of the data manually, and I was just going to do it the standard way of validating all the data on the back end with a schema and stuff. But then I thought of this idea, and actually this is a curious fact. So the way I thought of this, the data O attributes being attached to all the different elements in order to just specify what data is on the page so you can just save it all in one glob on the back end, is that I wanted to quickly develop a page, right, like this. So I wanted the user to be able to just come in here, customize this, and boom, they're done. And I was also thinking that people, like especially artists, the illustrators that I'm trying to go after with this product, they're going to want to customize the colors, the background. They're going to want to have like the title over here instead of, where it is. So I was thinking, what if it was easy to like customize each page? So what I was thinking is, instead of having a backend database, why not just have a static web page? And then every time the user presses a save button, I just grab all of the HTML and I send it to the backend, and then that's the data model. The data model is all in the HTML, right? So I could like go in here, right, and I could go in the timeline and I could drag this this node down here, and then if as the editor of this page I click save, it's going to grab this timeline, all of the HTML, and send it to the backend, right? And so this is going to be saved just like that. And you might think of, an easy to spot problem with this is that, okay, if you do that, whatever is responsible for showing this timeline expanded and showing this more detail section expanded is going to get saved to the backend too. Well, the idea would be that on the backend, since all of these are expanded using our little switch library, it'd be very easy to loop through all of them and take off the active classes. And so I would just loop through every element, take off the active classes, and save it like that, so that when we came back to this page, as a regular user, as potentially a client of the artist, I'm not going to have, this little box expanded, and I'm not going to have this more detailed section expanded, and I'm not going to have, the inline edit showing, right? In fact, I would take off the ability, of course, right? I would take off the ability to edit these things if you were not an admin user of the page. And I would do that on the back end. And then when someone reloaded the page, on the back end, I would check, are they an authorized user? And if they are, then I would add back the ability to be able to, click the inline edit. But either way, even if I made a mistake and a regular user could see the inline edit controls, which, ideally would never happen, right? I mean, that's a huge bug. But if that did happen, they still wouldn't be able to save it, right? They might change this around and they might click save, right? And it might show it for them that it's different, but it wouldn't go through on the back end. It would be like, there's an error, you're not authorized to save this information because you're not the owner of this page. So it wouldn't. It's like the simplest model I could think of how do I create a customizable website in the easiest possible way in the shortest amount of time. But then I really got into like thinking about it and how hard it would be. And even though I think it's still like a really good idea, I think that it'd basically be like creating an entirely new framework, right? Like I'm calling these like, you know, little widgets or like helper libraries with the saving all of the HTML on the back end. I think that is like a more full-fledged project. And in fact, I think someone should do it. I would be up for doing it sometime in the future. But, I'm not that experienced with back-end work. And, that's part of the reason I'm building all of this is just to make it, easier. Um, so yeah, so anyways, I decided not to do that. And, I decided that having the data separate from the, visual representation of it is actually a good idea, um, for a lot of like really convenient reasons. So I decided not to go there. Okay, so anyways, so this next part might not be quite as interesting because, oh, actually, I'll show you some interesting stuff first. Okay, so yeah, most of what I'm planning to do right now is organize this code because so right now I have the switch which doesn't have this new syntax yet. So I'm using an old syntax that I don't like as much, and the output is the same. I think I changed this, or maybe I didn't change it very much actually. But then I have to write all of the input ones because I haven't really worked on that yet. And then I also changed the syntax for this. And the reason I'm doing this is not to cause myself more of a headache. It's just the old syntax was a bit verbose, and I just like I've decided I've decided that I really like these helper libraries and I want to work with them. So, just for my long-term kind of, sanity, I want to make sure it's the best syntax right now so that I don't have to worry about, like switching everything over and rewriting the libraries later would be so much more of a headache than just rewriting the libraries right now, especially when I have most of the functionality, working. So anyways, so yeah, I'll show you something cool. So this is so I used to call this library Widget. Now it's called Switch. Widget, I think, is a little less, descriptive. But I'll just show you how it works. So right here we have the active classes, and then we have the active class option, and then we have the disable auto deactivate for. And then we have the trigger actions. So this is the widget itself that's going to be triggered. So this, you can think of this as the thing that's going to control whether something is visible or not. And then the trigger over here, which controls, if this widget is active or not. So if I click on this toggle, so anywhere on this pink square, I get this dash dash active and dash dash expanded class. And the reason I get the dash 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 active class is because that's the default. So what it does is it takes the name of the widget, which is here, W-AAA. That's the way I tell it's the name is because it has a W dash before it. Again, this is not the final syntax. I'm looking to move away from this. So the new way I'm going to decide what a widget is called is I'm going to have this property called data-switches, and inside of it is going to be a list of the switches separated by a space, and then options inside of parentheses. And I think this is just like a much nicer way of writing it, and I don't have to have like 1,000 classes attached to each name. But for now, this is what I have. So I can tell that this widget's called AAA because it has W-AAA. It automatically gets dash dash active applied to the widget name when it's active. And then I have this cool thing which allows me to attach a custom active class attribute, active class to it, custom class name when it's active. So in here I have AAA dash dash expanded. So that means when I toggle this open, it doesn't just get the dash dash active one, it gets dash dash expanded too. Okay, so this I have a trigger inside of this. Oh wait, sorry. So do I have auto deactivate? Um, so there's no auto deactivate. So you'll notice that when I click outside of the widget, these expanded classes don't go away. So the default is to just automatically close all the open widgets when you click elsewhere on the page. So that means like if I have a drop down and I click the drop down open, right? And then I decide, oh, I don't want to interact with that drop down. And I go over here and I click something else, that drop down's gonna close, right? It's gonna hide itself. This one won't do that. So this is more of like a, so I'll show you back at Artisfy. So if I click more details, this is going to open and show all the information inside of this bundle. If I click outside of here, right over here, it's not going to automatically close, okay? But if I go into here and I go into this, little area and I click outside over here, it is going to auto deactivate. So there's some that I want to stay open when I click open, and I want to manually have to close them, like there and like here. And there's some that I want to automatically close. Okay, so then there's this one. So I can trigger it from inside of the widget itself, right? So that's cool. And then it also doesn't auto deactivate, right? So if I click outside, it's not going to remove those classes. Okay, this one, if I click here and then I click outside, it's going to auto deactivate, right? So that's cool. And then I also have a prevent. So if I click here, it's not going to auto deactivate. So what prevent does is it says, okay, I'm going to look at the widgets I'm preventing actions for. And if they would normally be triggered, I'm not going to allow them to be triggered. So that's going to prevent things from opening and from closing. So if this prevent was like inside of this trigger, which we're going to see pretty soon, it would also prevent it there. But for now, it's just going to prevent the auto deactivate. Okay, so prevent on widget and toggle inside widget with auto deactivate. Okay, so let's see what this does. So this has the regular trigger, and then, oh, I think it's right there. So this purple area, I think, has the prevent on it. Oh no. Okay, so it has auto deactivate. Prevent on widget. I don't know. I think this might just be testing. I think this might just be testing that the action is going to override the prevent if it's on the same widget, like if it's at the same level. The prevent only prevents if it's at a lower level. Okay, so then we have the prevent element inside of the trigger. So we can trigger, right? And we can auto deactivate by clicking outside. But then we also have the prevent inside. So if we click inside the trigger, but on the prevent, it's not going to deactivate it. It's not going to toggle it. Okay, so then we have the trigger element inside the prevent element with auto deactivate. So again, it's a similar thing, right? And click here, it's not going to deactivate, but outside it's going to deactivate. And then we have trigger element inside trigger element, no auto deactivate. I think it means trigger element inside of prevent element. So I only wrote this for myself just to kind of test things. So sorry, it's not really how it should be. Like it's not as like robust of a test as it should be. So let's see. I have the trigger here, and then prevent deactivate. So I think this should, let me just check, but I think this should prevent it from deactivating it. So we have oh, okay, got it. Okay, so this is not a, so this element is not a prevent element. It's mislabeled. it is a trigger that that deactivates. So I can see, like, if I click on it normally, that's not going to do anything. But if I click on the trigger to activate, this prevent is going to act like the auto deactivate, right? So if I click on it, it's going to deactivate it. But there's no auto deactivate enabled on this trigger. So if I click outside over here, it's not going to auto deactivate. So that might be useful if, like, say you have a sidebar and you want to make it so that there's like one area where you can click and the sidebar will stay open, say if it's like relevant information, but anywhere else on the page that you click, you want to just kind of auto close that sidebar. Okay, then let's see, prevent on body with auto deactivate. So I can trigger this, right? And instead of turning off auto deactivate, I can have a prevent on the body. So then if I click anywhere on the page, it's going to work the same way as deactivating auto deactivate, or yeah, turning off auto deactivate. Okay, simple deactivate, no auto deactivate. Okay, so that just turns it off. Simple activate, yeah, and that just turns it on, and there's no way to turn it off. Multiple widgets on the same element. Yeah, so that activates and that toggles multiple widgets at the same time. That's cool. Multiple widgets on different elements. So one trigger can trigger all of these widgets at the same time to be active. And this is this is a crazy thing. So when I first started building this library, it was very, very simple. All it was is you would click an element and it would turn on an element on a different part of the page. And that's all. And it would just work one-to-one, and that's all it could do. And I used that for a long time in my own projects, in one of my work projects. And eventually I realized that, like, these things are a little bit more complicated than that. There's some times when I want to have more power, where like one click can do multiple things. And so I ended up creating this library that kind of is pretty cool. I actually really like it. But if you, so okay, let's finish this up real quick. Multiple. Oh, so this is all using the same ID. These are all using different IDs up here. Okay, and then plugging missing info. Okay, so these are all like edge cases, like error cases, where it'll show an error in the console because you misunderstood how the library worked and didn't get the syntax right. Okay, so anyways, I want to get to work, but this is just kind of something I wanted to show real quick. I do want to show another library called Easy Toggle State, and if you're like interested in something, a library like what I just showed you, this is where you want to go, because my library is not ready yet. And I mean, I would still, let you use it. But yeah, this is a cool one. So this basically does the same thing. Basically, what you have is a class that you want to toggle, and then you have a target you want to toggle it on. So you can use it the same way. A little bit, this I think is a little bit more flexible than my library for some specific cases. And then I think it's less flexible in some other ways. But I haven't like really totally thought through it yet. But you can do all kinds of things with this. So you can see, like, you can do a checkbox, right? You can do the switch box. That's pretty much the same thing. You can do an accordion, right? Or let me show you like a multi-accordion. I think he has that. Yeah. See? So you have like multiple areas that you can click. And you can see, so he has like a bunch of data controls on here. Actually, the ARIA controls are for accessibility, but he has a bunch of data controls. So my library is like pinpointed towards exactly this use case where you have like multiple sections that are going to like collapse and expand when something's clicked. Whereas his isn't like purpose built for this, so I think he needs more attributes for this. But I mean, you could still use this, I think, pretty much to do what I'm doing. I'm not sure if it would be as powerful for some things, but obviously he's got a lot of stuff here, and it's pretty sweet. And you can even have a drop down. You can build a drop down with it. You can build a dialog, right? Just like I was talking about before. Build a lightbox. Okay, so I think that's pretty cool. And the thing I like the best about this library and libraries like it is that normally if you're building some like custom UI components, you're gonna download, like I was saying before, hundreds of kilobytes of code. And that's gonna like make your website load a lot slower. But if you can use something like this instead and you have an understanding of web development and like CSS and how to style things appropriately across browsers and for mobile devices too, then this is going to be much, much, much cheaper for you in terms of bandwidth and the bandwidth of your users than using all these different separate libraries. And I just want to show you how light this is. So if you look at the the actual library you would be using. So this is before it being gzipped, but this is not even 6 kilobytes. So the idea that you could make something incredibly powerful for 6 kilobytes is just astounds me. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop this here, and then I'm going to continue with like my debugging work in a new video. Okay.